everyone, my name is Chelsea and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I am talking about my best books of 2021. So this year was another year that I feel like I had a hard time narrowing down my list of books and also figuring out a good order to put them in, because I like to try to talk about them from my least favorite book of my favorites to my most favorite book. And I had a lot of 5-star reads. I think I had over 100 5-star reads in my stats video. However, once I did take out the manga, comics, and graphic novels, I had a total of 24 5-star books and 14 4.5-star books. And the reason I wanted to say 5-star and 4.5-star, even though I'm going to be talking mostly about 5-star reads today, is that I did actually really enjoy a lot of the 4.5-star reads I had. When I read them and rated them 4.5 stars, some of them just weren't quite to a 5-star for me. 5 stars are very much a personal feeling when I rate books, and 4.5 stars are basically still a perfect book. I really enjoyed it, but it didn't quite have that that emotional feeling that pushed me over the edge. But I did still have some 4.5-star reads that I keep thinking about over and over and over again. So I have a couple here that I wanted to mention, sort of I guess an honorable mention, so that you guys know that I'm still thinking about them even now. The first one is Eat, Pray, Die by Chelsea Field. This is a book that I read during my What's in a Name type of vlogs in 2021, and I gave it 4.5 stars because you do have to have a little bit of suspension of reality. It's a humorous mystery. It might also be sort of a cozy mystery, but I don't think I've actually read any traditionally published cozy mysteries, so I'm not entirely sure if it fits in that category or not. But it is something that I keep thinking about. I read the second book in the series as well in 2021. That one was not quite as good because the mystery I felt did not come together as well, but it is very funny. I love our main character. She is so snarky. I love the fact that she is a poison taster, so she has this skill set that I don't think a lot of people in books that we read have, and I just absolutely loved it. We are slowly getting a little bit of romance in the books as well, and so it's one of those series that I definitely want to keep reading, and I keep thinking about the first book in the series, even though technically I did not give it 5 stars. It's not on my favorites list that we're going to talk about today, but I had to mention it. And then the other 4-star stuff that I wanted to talk about is the Ice Planet's Barbarian series by Ruby Dixon. The first book I actually gave 4 stars, so I'm mostly talking about the second and third book, Barbarian Alien and Barbarian Lover. I absolutely love these, and again, there was just a small thing that I think didn't push it into a full 5 stars for me, but I absolutely love these books. I keep thinking about them. Even the first one that I didn't rate as high because there is a small non-consensual type of thing in this that I just did not like, but everything else I absolutely loved. I also pretty much listened to all of these on audio, and the audiobooks for these are amazing. So far in the first 3 books, because I haven't listened to any more, the narrators are 2 different narrators, a guy and a girl, but they're the same narrators for every single book, and they are phenomenal. They make the reading experience so much better, and yeah, these are sci-fi romances. I feel like most people know about these by now, and I just really love them. Okay, so those are the honorable mentions. Now, I do actually have, I think, a list of 20 here of my top books of 2021, just because I could not narrow it down anymore. I had a really hard time. At one point, I actually had a list of 30 with some 4.5 stars thrown in there, similar to the ones that we just talked about, but I did end up narrowing it down to 20, and yes, okay, let's jump on in. So number 20 on my list is Written in the Stars by Alexandria Bellafleur. This is a sapphic romance that I absolutely loved. I believe it is a take on Pride and Prejudice. One of our main characters' names is Darcy, so that's obviously hinting at that there. And this is basically a fake dating trope one. They go on a first date together, and it is disastrous. They do not really like each other, but one of the characters has their brother hounding them to get a girlfriend, and so they sort of lie and say instead of having a horrible date, they had an amazing one and want to get to know the other girl better, and so they have to be fake dating to sort of play that off for the brother. I just really enjoyed this one. It was super cute. Fake dating trope is actually one of the tropes that I love the most as well, and I definitely need to read more in the series because this is like a series of romance companion novels, and yeah, it was just so heartwarming. I loved it. Number 19 is Slay by Brittany Morris. This actually was my very first read of 2021. Gave it a full 5 stars. It is sort of low on this list because of the fact that it is a YA contemporary, and those are not my favorite to read from, and so while I did absolutely love this, I could not necessarily put it higher on the list, but this follows a girl in high school who has created a video game that is exclusively for Black people to play. It has a lot of Black culture and Black references, and me being white, most of them I knew, but some of them I didn't, and I actually did like learning about them as well, and it has a lot of talk about racism and prejudice and that kind of stuff in here. One thing I had heard about this book previously is that people thought the video game aspect was not super believable. I think she can do that if she wants. Like, I'm not going to say she can't make a video game. The only thing that was slightly unbelievable for me is the fact that it is a VR game and like so many people played it. I don't think that is something in our world yet, even though this felt present day, that is very prevalent. Like, I don't feel like VR games are super big, but maybe that's just me. Number 18 is Wolfsong by TJ Klune. So this is a gay, new adult romance. It is quite a chunky book. I don't have a physical copy here at all, and I really did enjoy it. One thing I will say, because I don't hear many people talk about it, but there is an element in here of like underage romance. Not really, but this is about werewolves, and with a lot of different werewolf things that we see in media and in books and stuff, we do have these sort of fated mates type of thing, and at the beginning of this book, the fated mates are between underage kids. None of it is romantic or sexual or anything until both participants are of age, like definitely of age, but it is something that was a little bit like, oh, I wasn't expecting that when I first went into it, but overall this is a very good paranormal romance because we do have the werewolves and everything, but like found family. It does get very dark at times, but it like pulls at your heartstrings. I absolutely loved reading from our main character, and this is one of those series that I feel like I have never heard anybody speak bad about, and I was so happy that I read it. Okay, and then number 17 is A Trial of Sorcerers by Elise Kova. This is an indie published YA fantasy. 17, yes, that I absolutely loved. This has an emphasis on elemental magic. It is in the same world as her Air Awakens series, which I have not read yet because you don't actually need to read those before you get into these. But we do have that emphasis on elemental magic. Our main character actually has like a water ice magic, and in this we are going to have trials, a competition to figure out like the best magic practitioner for each element to then go to another country that their country is trying to like, I think, have a treaty with, and so a lot of this is the magical competition. I absolutely loved our characters. I love the way it was written, and this is just a really fun book because I love competition aspects. The second one is going to be coming out soon, and I desperately need to get my hands on it because I love this one so much. Number 16 is Monstrosity by Laura Diaz-de-Arce. This is actually a short story collection. I don't think 16. I don't think I've ever had a short story collection on a list like this because I barely read them. This was a book that I read during a like reading books that were recommended to me by Christina from Northwest Reader. They were all indie self-published horror stuff, and so this is a collection of short stories that have a big horror focus. Not all of them are strictly horror stories. Some are a little bit more fantasy, storybook-esque, but they're all very feminist as well, very much focused on the women in the stories, and I absolutely loved it. It's the only book I've read by Laura Diaz-de-Arce so far, but I desperately want to read more. Number 15 is The Castle School for Troubled Girls by Alyssa B. Scheinmel. This is one that when I first went into the book, I thought we were going to be in a sort of different genre than we actually were. We follow a main character who goes to this castle school, which is a very small academy with very few students, and it's basically like alone in the wilderness, and at night she starts to hear some sort of like music or something coming from across the, I think, forest where they are, something like that. And so I definitely went in expecting a different genre than what we got, but what we did end up getting was so good. So go into this without any expectations for the genre, because it is more contemporary than I thought it was going to be, but it is also something that is very focused on like grief. So it is definitely something that hit me very, very hard, and you get into that more as you go through the story. I'm not going to give any spoilers or anything, but it is deeper and darker than I thought it was going to be, but I absolutely loved it. At number 14, I have Nevermore by Jessica Townsend. This is the first book in the Trials of Morgan Crow Nevermore series. It is a middle grade fantasy. This one also has magical trials in it as well. And again, I absolutely loved this book. This follows Morgan Crow, who's basically doomed to die on her next birthday, but instead of dying, she gets swept away to a magical world, and she wants to like join their society, but in order to do that, she has to finish some magical trials. So again, we do have a lot of like magic and competition in here, lots of good friendship stuff as well, and I just absolutely loved the world. This is definitely a middle grade series I need to continue. At number 13, I have Where Dreams Descend by Janella Angelis. This is another book that I read really, really early in January of 2021, and I just keep thinking about it every so often. This is one that even when I read it in January, I wasn't able to express my thoughts about it very well, because the main reason I gave it 5 stars is I just had this feeling in my chest the entire time I was reading it, some sort of emotion that I was just like, I had to keep reading. I could not put it down. This is another book with like magical competitions. I obviously really enjoyed those, but this is a book that is billed as like Moulin Rouge meets Phantom of the Opera, and it has magicians that then do a magical competition. And yes, again, I just absolutely loved it. But the main reason it's on this list is I had this feeling. I can't even tell you what it was, but I had it like the entire time I was reading this. And so yeah, one of my favorites. At number 12, I have Song of Blood and Stone by Elle Penelope. This is an adult fantasy romance that, again, I was hooked. I did not want to put this book down. This follows a world that has 2 warring nations separated by a magical mantle. One side is a race of black people with magic, and the other side is a race of white people without magic. We do have other talk of other countries and places as well that are, again, seems to be very focused on like, this is the race of people that come from there. So I thought that was a very interesting way to divide everything up. And one of the characters that we follow is Jasminda, who is living on the side of the white people without magic, but because she is mixed race, she resembles her father, who was black with magic, and she looks black with magic. We do have some very good talk about racism and stuff in here, and what ends up happening is some soldiers from the other region come through the veil with a spy. They don't realize they have a spy, but there is a spy there, and she has to try and help him because it appears the veil is going to be torn down and war is going to happen. This is fantasy romance, so again, lots of fantasy, but we also do have those romantic elements, and I just absolutely love this one. Coming in at number 11, I have City of Ghosts and Tunnel of Bones by Victoria Schwab. So I actually read these pretty much back to back in, I believe, October. These are middle grade horror, paranormal type of books, and I really did enjoy them. I think I actually read these all as audio, but they were so well done. I liked the fact that it was middle grade, so it wasn't too hard to get into. It was very gripping, very easy to read, but it is horror, so there were some things in there that maybe weren't like scary to a 31-year-old, but would have been sort of scary for the audience that this was going for. But as always with Victoria Schwab, V.E. Schwab, I absolutely love the writing style, and so I was hooked. I love these. I had to talk about them together because of the fact that I read them like back to back. I do think I liked City of Ghosts slightly more, but I did give them both 5 stars. Number 10, I have Monday's Not Coming by Tiffany D. Jackson. So this is another one I actually did listen to on audiobook, and I think partially it helped because the audio narrator was amazing, and then partially I feel like I do need to read this again eventually as a physical book because the timelines are a little bit weird in here because they have like the before and the after, and you don't really know what is going on with that until you get further into the book. But again, I absolutely loved it. This is a dark, hard-hitting YA contemporary that I wasn't necessarily like putting off, but when I know that things are going to be a little bit more hard-hitting, sometimes I don't gravitate toward them, but I absolutely love this. I think especially because I am a mom, some of the things that were talked about with parenting and having children definitely really hit. At number 9, I have Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. So one of the Riley Sagers that I read in 2020, Home Before Dark, also ended up on my top best books of the year list, and so it should be no surprise that Lock Every Door came on here as well. I did also read Survive the Night by Riley Sager. That one I actually think I gave a 4 star, so it was not good enough to get on this list, but still entertaining. This though, I can't even really get into it too much because it is an adult thriller, but I had so much fun reading this. I read it as a buddy read with Rye from Rye's Reading Corner, and this basically follows an apartment sitter who is, you know, sitting in an apartment when she starts to think something weird is going on in the apartment building, and maybe other apartment sitters are disappearing, and yeah, that's all I can really say, but I really did like the reveals for this. I feel like it was very different than some of the other Riley Sager books. However, we always follow a very sort of like strong female character as our main character, so that obviously is the same as well. At number 8, I have Well Played, but more than that, I have Wellmatched. I actually gave Well Played a 4.5 stars, but I gave Wellmatched 5 stars. These are the second and third book in the Renaissance Fair Well Met type of series from Jen DeLuca, which I have absolutely been loving. I know Well Met was on my list of best books for 2020, and obviously the pattern is continuing. I loved these so much, especially, like I said, Well Matched. These are just following more people in this Renaissance Fair world. Well Played actually follows Stacy, one of Emily's friends from Well Met, and Daniel, who is new, and then Well Matched follows April, who is Emily's sister, and Mitch, who is one of the guys that we meet in Well Met. And again, absolutely loved it. I gave Well Played a 4.5 stars because at the beginning of the book, we do rely a lot on texts and emails, and that kind of dynamic is just not really my thing, but the actual story I did love once we got past that part. And then Well Matched is another fake dating trope type of thing, and so yes, I love that so much. Coming in at number 7, I have Dusk or Dark or Dawn or Day by Shauna McGuire. This is a novella that I've had for a little while. I've never heard anybody talk about it, even though Shauna McGuire is quite popular in the booktube, book sphere type of thing. But this is about ghosts. It's about a woman who has become a ghost, and she is still sort of living in, I think, New York City, but the type of ghost that she is and how the ghost stuff that works in this world is completely different than what you would expect. And again, it talks a little bit about grief and life and that kind of stuff, and I just absolutely loved it. Number 6 is Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. This is a middle grade fantasy series that is a little bit like Men in Black, but for fantasy. Amari is actually looking for her brother that has gone missing, and hears about this like magical world living in the same world as ours, but we can't see it. And in order for her to sort of infiltrate that society, she has to do some magical trials. Again. But so again, I absolutely love this one. I loved the characters and the friendships in here, and the fact that we had magical trials. Book 2 is going to be coming out this year, and I'm definitely going to have to read that because this was just so fun. I loved the fact that they took it as a sort of Men in Black type of thing. It wasn't like a whole nother world to our own. It's just parts of our world that normal people can't see. Then coming in at number 5, I have Keeper of the Lost Cities, Exile, and Everblaze. So this is very similar to the Jen DeLuca books. Exile I actually gave 4.5 stars, whereas Everblaze I gave 5 stars. I still absolutely love these. These are books 2 and 3 in the Keeper of the Lost Cities series by Shannon Messenger. I actually just finished Everblaze in December, and I was hooked. Like, again, I could not put it down. These are very thick books, but because they're middle grade, they read much quicker. Like, this is a 600-page book, but I think it reads closer to a 400-page book for me, and so I didn't want to put it down. These books in general, Keeper of the Lost Cities in general, follow our main character of Sophie, who grew up in the human world, but then figures out when she's like 11, I believe, that she's actually an elf. And so she goes to their elven world, they have magical creatures, and there's a conspiracy of things going on. This one was very, very action-packed, and from what I understand, I believe she's 13 in this one. So I think we have aged 1 year with each subsequent book with her so far, and yes. These are, again, just middle grade fantasies that were amazing. I did not want to put them down. I love the fact that she has a good friend group, almost like found family type of stuff again. I need more in this series. Number 4 is Kings of the Wyld by Nicholas Eames. This is an adult fantasy that plays with the typical fantasy tropes. However, our main characters are retired mercenaries. They're pretty much all, like, I would say, like in their 60s or so, and they're trying to get the mercenary band back together to go rescue one of the daughters of one of the band members. And I think because of how old they are, she's probably also like in her 30s maybe, so she's an adult, but like there's stuff going on. They need to get everybody back together to go and save her. And the fact that we are taking fantasy tropes that are very, very common and sort of turning them on their head a little bit, it is very humorous, but there are also times that it is very hard-hitting. Like, I feel like I teared up in the first chapter. Like, there were some things that just like hit very hard, but then we also have that juxtaposition of the action and battle and fighting and the heartwarming friends, found family type of stuff. Like, it had all three in there, and it was put together so well of like when you're gonna get each one. Again, I did not want to put it down, and I believe this is a series of companion novels, so the second one, there is a second one out, is not going to be directly following the same characters in here, but I love the writing style and the world so much, I definitely need to read that one as well. Getting into our top 3 now, number 3 is The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. So this is an adult romance that I just absolutely loved. It was actually my first Christina Lauren, not my only so far. I actually read one other one this year, but this one was my absolute favorite. I feel like part of it is because of the characters, or at least most of it is because of the characters. We follow a single mother, and then we also follow a scientist who has like a dating app, and they somehow get matched at a very, very high percentage level, but they have met previously to getting matched and they didn't really like each other. So we have them trying to overcome that kind of stuff. Again, the characters make this story because we also have friendships that our single mother has with other women, and so we get to see that. We get to see her with her grandparents. Like, the familial and friendship aspects of this book are phenomenal, but I also just really loved the romance. This is also one romance book, I don't remember fully about everything else, but where the sex scenes are not like a play-by-play, they're more of an impressionistic type of view based on the emotions of the characters in the scene, and I think that is one of my like favorite ways to read sex scenes. I know I'm probably like a minority here, but I absolutely love that as well. And so yes, this is my favorite Christina Lauren so far. Number 2 is Our Bloody Pearl by D.N. Bryn. This is an indie adult fantasy with sirens and pirates that I absolutely loved. It has a plot of like a siren who had been captured by a specific pirate and trying to get back at them. There is also found family and friendship aspects. It is quite bloody and dark at points, but again, that just made me want to read it more. Like, it was just so well put together between the lighter aspects and the darker aspects, and this is also one of those books that I just can't stop praising how much diversity we have in the book, because we have a character who is non-binary, we have a relationship between side characters who are sapphic, we have asexual representation, we have disability representation, we have POC representation. I just fell in love with this book and this world and the writing style, so I definitely need to read more by this author as well. It was so good, and the cover, gorgeous. And then finally, the last book that I have on this list, my favorite book of 2021, should not really be of any surprise because I feel like a lot of people have been hyping this book up. It deserves all of the hype, but also I've mentioned it a lot in the last couple months because it is Iron Widow by chelsea.zhao. This is a YA sci-fi that is taking characters from Chinese history but putting them in a more like sci-fi futuristic type of setting where there's mechas and aliens, and This was so good. The characters really help drive this story, even though there is a lot of plot as well, but the characters are what definitely did it for me. I was hooked. I was rooting for them. The ending, like the last 100 pages, I was like, I could not put the book down because there was so much happening. I need to reread this, and then eventually there will be more in this series because there was just so much going on. This follows Zetienne, who is like a commoner girl, and in this world they have the mechas, and in order to pilot them they need a guy and a girl, and more often than not the girls end up dying. It is just something that happens in their piloting mechanism. Well, her sister had signed up to go and be in a mecha and was murdered before she could actually pilot a mecha, and so she decides to go there and become a pilot in order to avenge her sister. That's the very beginning of the book. We're gonna stop there because so much more happens, but like that's the whole driving force behind what is going on in this story. But again, I absolutely loved it. Most of the characters are very morally gray, but they're very compelling, and I just loved reading from them. Okay, so those are all 20 books that I have on my best books list for the year. I don't want to talk too much more, but I did have a little bit of stats for it because I was curious about the breakdown of what I have here. So one of the things that I did for these best books is I broke it down by age category. So I had 20 books here, and 55% of these books are adults, 25% are YA, and 20% are middle grade. And then I compared it to the overall age categories for all the books that I'd read in the year, minus the manga, because I know for a fact those skewed my results for age category. So if I took out all of the manga, every single book besides those that I read in 2021, overall I had 54.4% adult, 29.3% young adults, and 12.9% middle grade. So overall, the percentages are pretty accurate, except I have much more middle grade percentage-wise in my favorite books of the year than I actually read throughout the entire year. I think that just means that in general, I know what I like in middle grade. I don't read very many of them, but the ones I read, I usually do really like. And then the only other stat that I really wanted to check was indie versus traditional. So for my stack here, I had 20% indie books and 80% traditionally published books, and that actually is very close to what I actually read for everything during the year, because I had 18.1% indie books and 81.9% traditionally published books. I do want those percentages to get a little bit closer in 2022, so I'll read more indie books hopefully, but it does not surprise me that the percentages basically still carried over for my favorite books. I had almost the exact same percentages for both age groupings, except for middle grade, and indie versus traditionally published. It was just something that I wanted to check, and I thought it was pretty cool. So those are all of the books that I thought were the best, my favorite of 2021. If you had any that were very similar, let me know, or if you had any that you hated but I loved, let me know, because I just find that very interesting. I will be having my worst books video up very soon, and I'll basically be asking the opposite question. If I have any worst books that you absolutely loved, I'm just curious. But that's it. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up to let me know. Subscribe to this channel if you would like to see more videos. I do have videos up Tuesdays and Thursdays, so I will see you then. Bye!